Welcome to the Gaudium et Spes podcast, where every other week we bring you Catholic teachings and stories of faith from people throughout the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. Now, here are your hosts, Suzanne McNinch and Chez Filippini.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 101 of the Gaudium et Spes podcast. It's good to be with you guys again. I am joined today by somebody you might have seen before in other YouTube videos and other productions from the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee, or over at the place where he's the director. This is Dr. Luke Arredondo.
How's it going, Chez?
Luke, good to see you, man.
Very happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for stopping by. You're here. Tell us who you are, what you're doing for the diocese, if people don't know you yet.
Yeah, so my title here in the diocese is that I'm the executive director of the St. Brendan Center for Evangelization and Spirituality, which is this 38-acre property out on Beulah Road the diocese closed on in 2023. And then I moved last summer in August, so it's really coming up on a year since we first got our feet wet in Pensacola. I'm out there many days. I come in the office sometimes and I've got things that I need to be here for, but I'm trending more toward just being out there, right. Checking on buildings, I've given a lot of tours to all the different groups that have set up retreats so far or have them kind of planned in the future. A lot of people want to really lay eyes on it before they say, yeah, we'll do our weekend retreat out here. So if you're interested in hosting any kind of retreat out there, if you're a parish or just someone in the area, I'm almost always available to give personal tours and just kind of give you a sense of the place. It's really beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I really do think you have to be out there to actually get a sense of how different that experience would be than just any other place that you might be able to have a retreat. Our facilities are really good for smaller groups. But there's also a little bit of penitential aspect to some of the things that we get out there. Not too much, but it's not a resort.
That's right.
But it really has a character. Just there's a feel of it that's something different. So, I've been here since August doing that, and I've got some stuff coming up on the schedule. We're going to do a retreat in September. Me and Tom Neal and a friend of ours from New Orleans are going to do a weekend retreat on sort of the 3 stages of the spiritual life. So I'm really excited about that. I'm trying to put something together on the 60th anniversary of the close of the Second Vatican Council, but I haven't nailed that down yet. So diocese website, there'll be some dates coming up soon, and a mailing list very soon that you can subscribe to hear more than you want to from me all the time. So if you're into that sort of thing,
which
it's almost here.
If you're listening to this, that you're going to be into that sort of thing. Luke, it's been great getting to know you over this past year, and the reason we're starting, guys, if you listen to episode 100 of the Gaudium et Spes podcast, it was awesome. We had Bishop, we had Charmaine, we had some check-ins from other folks with Suzanne. But we did preview at the very, very end, if you stayed on that long, that we would be starting a little bit of a different series and a twist on the Gaudium et Spes podcast, which will make use of Luke Arredondo's many gifts, especially his expertise on Catholic social teaching. So that's what we're here to do. Today is the first of that episode. But yeah, it's going to be a wild ride. We're 2 dads. We have lots of kids. We have... If you haven't seen, guys, if you're just listening, you
gotta watch the YouTube version of this one.
This communicates everything. We're ditching the old little mugs and we're going straight to 100 ounces of Gaudium et Spes Polar Pop goodness. So, cheers to you, my friend. Thanks for coming on. And as always, we start our podcast with the great line from Gaudium et Spes 1, which you know well, but I'll just say it anyways. The joys, the hopes, the griefs, and anxieties of the men of this age, especially those who are poor and in any way afflicted. These are the joys, the hopes, the griefs, and anxieties of the followers of Christ. So, what's going on in the life of dad and husbanding and working and all the things? Anything catching your eye as far as?
Well, my oldest daughter is going to be graduating from Little Flower here in a little over a week, so that's a big deal. She'll be going to high school. She's going to go to the Chesterton School in the fall. So that's just continues to be weird to me that she's finishing 8th grade, is going to be going into high school, and then of course we got a new pope yesterday, so I have not slept well, or I've just been nervous and excited and anxious, and I've got all this energy that I need to release because his name was Leo the 14th. And I know everybody's like, oh, it's an American pope, and whatever. I mean, that is a big deal, but to me, when I heard Leon, and then however you say 14th. In Latin, like I recognized it, and I just couldn't believe it. It's like that's so crazy because I wrote my dissertation about Leo XIII, and it was obscure topic that I figured whatever, no one needs to know this information, but it's something that's interesting to me, and it'll be fine, And I did it, and like I succeeded in doing. It was just like I have to do something. I got to write about something.
That's right.
So I wrote about that, and now the next pope is Leo XIV, and suddenly there's maybe some use to having studied Leo XIII. All of a sudden, I've got a few small little things lined up just since yesterday about people that are wanting to get me to come do something. So that's really cool.
That's awesome.
Unexpected.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everything. First of all, we're on the same wavelength. Both our daughters are graduating 8th grade this year, so I'm in the exact same. Like, whoa. We had a meeting with our daughter Lucia is going to Catholic High here in town, and we had like a meeting at the school and walking the hallways, seeing lockers. Like that they don't use, by the way. My daughter is going into this environment. And for so many of it, like high school is such a life-defining existence and a part of our lives. I'm just like, am I ready for that? My wife dropped her off at her first. Catholic High has a dance for all incoming freshmen.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So my wife dropped her off, and like that was the first moment we're like, I'm crying because my baby is, So crazy, man. Graduation season to all parents, to all students, if you're listening, graduating. Best wishes. Enjoy the time. I hope it's great. I hope your summers are great. But man, this is like we're about to do summer school. If you think school's out of session, we're going to learn some things here. And so you just said, first and foremost, we are recording this on May 9th. So in God's providence, we're starting a series. This is essentially going to be a 10-part series on Catholic social teaching. And the granddaddy of Catholic social teaching is, of course, the great Leo XIII. So anyhow, you've already shared a reaction, a little bit more, just digesting as you've read about our new Holy Father, what that's been like, what you've been impressed by, what caught your eye.
Yeah, well, I read his first homily today because we're behind Roman time, so he preached his first homily, and I guess the cardinals are still there. So he mentions them in the text, but beautiful, Christological, mission-oriented, talking about the different kinds of responses people gave to the question of who Jesus was in the disciples and the apostles' time, right? The time the New Testament narrates. And he says, these are the same kinds of responses that are on the lips of people today. So the urgency of going to evangelize those people who are the least interested, he is just coming out of the gate stomping, saying, this is where we've got to go. Yep. Which is challenging because it's not comfortable to go try and find those people who aren't interested, right? And then let's figure out a way to get you interested in the gospel. I mean, that could be so weird, just like person to person. But that's the mission of the church, and that's how he sees it. And so his reflection in his first homily, 24 hours later after becoming the Pope, a beautiful respect for the office that he's inherited, the mission of propagating the faith, of spreading the gospel, of proclaiming Jesus Christ to the world. It's really, really cool. And I mean, something that doesn't really matter, but that has just continued to impress itself on me is that, Pope Francis was a Jesuit and he wore his distinctive clothing. Yep. And I was never annoyed by it. It was like, it's cool. That's really neat, When Leo the 14th came out and he was wearing normal papal clothing, right. I just realized, I think I missed that a little bit. Yeah. So it was really cool. It was very cool to see that.
Yeah, the first papal election I can remember, well, I wasn't even born when John Paul II got elected, but 2005, I think for you and I, that would be the first election. And I just remember that that continuity of I guess that's a papal stole, special papal stole. And I was like, that's my abiding memory of my first papal election. So I would say the same things. Just impressed by this. What's within his person is, so he grew up in Chicago, and in the 50s and 60s, that still would have been kind of the heyday of cultural American Catholicism, where most people went to mass, and
especially in Chicago,
exactly. This powerhouse. So you saw in the homily today, he talked about a lot of, he's like, Christ is seen as an absurdity in some parts of the world.
Or irrelevant.
Or irrelevant. So he's speaking to, like, I'm from a place that has experienced this Western, especially this Western civilizational detachment from the faith. But then he's also been in this true missionary space where people in Peru are in poverty, but also really attracted to the gospel, really attracted to this life as a Christian community. So he'll just have that in his back pocket his entire time. He's like, I know I'm coming from a place that has kind of rejected the faith or grown cold to it, but I'm also from a place where I know what missionary zeal can accomplish. Like, take heart, like this is possible. So,
and I know, he's an Augustinian. He read or whatever. He recited that line from Augustine about what I am for you terrifies me. Yeah. What I am with you consoles me. What I am for you is a temptation. What I am with you is a consolation, or whatever. I don't know the line exactly, but I heard it in Italian, and it was famous enough that even a fool like me knows, like, oh, this is that line from Augustine, that one really cool line that you read every now and then, like on a postcard or something. And then what is he for us? He's a bishop. Yep. But what is he with us? He's a Christian. Yeah. And I was like, man, that is great. And Augustine preached and wrote on the scriptures so much, right? So I have some, and with, selecting Leo as his name, he's the first pope to write an encyclical about the Bible. I'm a little, getting a little excited about what this is going to mean for papal preaching and papal teaching. Nothing wrong with Francis not doing a lot in that area. It wouldn't have made sense for him, for his personality, his background. So maybe, we have a pope that teaches more systematically on the Bible. I don't know, but that would be really cool. I'd really be excited about that. So we'll see.
Agreed. Well, that's a great place to jump off. So we are doing this series on Catholic social teaching, which a lot of people, as we talked about already, would associate with Pope Leo XIII and kind of as a papal tradition. And it is very much. That's what we're talking about a lot, is papal documents and this kind of growing organic body of work that has gone across the 19th, 20th, and then the 21st centuries to address the issues of the day. But you're a man with a great passion for the scriptures, like Leo XIII, wrote Providentissimus Deus, which is... That's its own topic. We're going to start, though, with something that seems obvious, which is everything that we teach in the church is rooted in the scriptures, but it's especially important to anchor ourselves at the beginning of this in the scriptures. Take it away. Why? How?
Sure. Yeah. Well, just to narrate it a little bit more so people understand what we're saying, a lot of times when you just kind of Google or reflexively, hear someone answer a question about what Catholic social teaching is, what is Catholic social teaching, or even in the, in light of the election of the Pope Leo XIV, they say, oh, the last Pope was, with the name Leo, was Leo XIII, and he was the Pope that started Catholic social teaching. You'll hear people speak that way, and even sometimes scholars write that way, that the Catholic social teaching tradition started in 1891 with the authoring of Rerum Novarum by Leo XIII. Now, he did write a very important document on the social question of his day, and it was in 1891. And then after that, popes have successively written sort of anniversary year documents reflecting again on what Leo taught, which was at a particular time, specific focus, which we'll get to in a later episode, and then say, well, what's the question of today? What's the social question of today that the church needs to speak to? And so there is a whole line of these papal documents that go from 1891 forward, and it's super clear what the relationship is. But it is really wildly overstating the importance of these papal documents to say that that's where Catholic social teaching starts. And if you look at the compendium, for instance, the compendium of social doctrine that the church puts out, what you'll see before you get to any of the so-called themes of Catholic social teaching is actually a section, going straight to the Bible. So even in the compendium, it's there. So what we wanted to do with this series is spend a long time, several episodes, looking at most of those documents in turn. But before we even get there, we've really got to lay some of the foundation that this is where Leo and the other popes get their fundamental insights from is from the tradition of the church, which is rooted first and foremost in the scriptures. So that's kind of the idea of this episode. Chez asked me, if I would be interested in doing a few episodes, and I was like, well, we would have to do at least one just on the Bible before we even start. And he was like, all right, good idea. Yeah, that's good. So that's what we're trying to do. And I mean, I really feel like people probably that if you happen to hear me often, you just probably like, this guy just never stops talking about the book of Genesis. Like everything I want to tell people about, and it's like, well, what we need to do first is read this creation account from Genesis. And of course, we're not going to read the whole thing, but those first 3 chapters of the book of Genesis are an indispensable point of reference for everything. Yeah. I mean, it's everything, because it shows us who God is and who we are. And if we don't get those questions right, or if we don't at least have a sense of who God is and who we are and what the difference is between God and us, then there's no hope we're going to get anything else right. So the creation accounts, especially those first 3 chapters, they tell us so many things that are fundamental and that lay a foundation. I mean, it gives us this sense of God's transcendence on the one hand, because he creates. How does he create? Not like the other gods that you would read about in the ancient, Near Eastern world. He's not using material that's already there and forming it anew. He's not conquering some other god and proclaiming his victory and using the body of another god to form people. And this is what some of the other ancient religions sort of have as their foundation. Myth, right? Yeah. These are the other ancient Babylonian myths. And the God of the Bible is utterly transcendent. He creates everything. He's not using matter that's already there. He creates the matter. He creates what we say, out of nothing, creation ex nihilo, which is a totally different order of power. And he creates freely. It's not a competition. He's not trying to win anything. He's creating freely and out of love. He creates all of creation is a gift. It's a gift from himself to us, to human beings, right? We have this really important role in creation as being stewards, as being co-responsible for creation. So we take sort of his office of running creation. That's a responsibility and a gift, right? And it's something that goes beyond what we really deserve. So even before we're saved, God is already giving us this tremendous responsibility and blessing of, here's a creation that you in my name and in my image and likeness will tend to, will care for.
This is an important premise, right? Some people will get a little skittish about the church offering commentary or teaching or direction on things which pertain to government, social order, economics, things that we would call secular. It doesn't have to do with kind of like the doctrine of salvation.
Yeah, it's not about the Trinity.
That's right. Yeah. But what you're saying here, look, Genesis it locks us into this. Like if you're made in the image and likeness of God, you're locked into a place of authority, work from the very beginning. And so God has entrusted is like, what are you doing on earth? Well, you have to order creation. And that's essentially what Catholic social teaching is.
Yeah, Catholic social teaching is a natural outflow of this responsibility that human beings have because they're made in God's image and likeness, because they are called to stewardship and dominion. We have to do this. We have this task given to us. So we'll read just a couple of verses. So this is Genesis 1, 26 through 29. So you see this very clearly laid out. Then God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over the cattle and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. And that dominion over the sea, the air, and the earth, it's not just like this is a list of three things, right? The whole creation account that we don't have time to read and work all the way through lays out basically these three components of creation. Creation has the sky, it has the earth, it has the waters. That means everything. So you have dominion over these things, and that dominion is not free reign to do whatever you want. It's to rule in his order, in his image, in his likeness. So the creation account, I mean, just these few verses, they lay out who God is. He's our creator. What our responsibilities are. We have dominion and stewardship. We're supposed to be fruitful and multiply. And what the relationship is between Adam and Eve, right? And I mean, that's laid out a little bit more clearly in Genesis 2, but mankind as a species is called to communion. It's called to love, and it's called to justice and all of these things. The relationship that Adam and Eve have before the fall, that's what all human relationships are supposed to look like, right? This pure giving, this pure, this justice in between two parties. Not suspicion, not competition, not threats, right? And so after the fall, when Adam and Eve begin to have mutual suspicion of one another, that's signaling a social breakdown, right? That's not what we're called to. We're called to live in communion with others and in communion with God. And so the Catholic social teaching that looks at modern questions about economics or war, famine, whatever, any of these pressing issues that a lot of people say, oh, it's a secular issue. Yeah. They reflect the breakdown of communion. And that's the foundational thing that the Genesis lays out for us. We are called to live in dignity and communion with one another and with God. And because of that, we can't get out of the social question. It's actually irresponsible for us to think, look, the church doesn't have anything to do with who you vote for or what the tax rate is or what, I don't know, any tariffs or whatever. It's like that. No. We have to be concerned with that because we're human beings. We're people who have this responsibility given to us, and there's this responsibility that Jews have. We're not going to get away from it. So the idea that the fundamental call to people is just get out of society,
right?
Set up your own society somewhere where everybody's going to be perfect.
Flee to the desert. Or
that's never going to work. The monks that do that are doing something very different from building their own culture and civilization because they're removing themselves from everything. They're cutting themselves off. The great monastic centers did not just retreat and build up walls and stay away, right? They cultivated virtue. They cultivated actually land. I mean, they did all these things and gave them to people. Right. They educated people, called them in for prayer, called them in. So, there's a little bit of a sidestep.
So many of the great saints who tried to, story of Benedict who spends 3 years as a hermit trying. It doesn't matter. People just find him.
Yeah, he can't get away.
Eventually, he's pulled into a very, very public life as the Father of Benedict in order. So we'll summarize Genesis here. We're called to communion.
Yes,
this is inescapable. We're given a task and responsibility, and that is if we're imaging God in the world, that's we can't do without a social commitment,
right?
Because this is the gift He's given to us.
Yes,
and we can even say that the foundational sense of what a relationship is that we're trying to achieve in social justice work or anything like that is more based on Adam and Eve's initial call to communion.
Yeah,
we're trying to retrieve that. So, okay, we're going to skip the rest of the Torah, the Pentateuch.
Sure. Yeah,
unfortunately. Tip of a cap. We're going to get to the full effects of Israel's dealing with their original sin, coming out of paganism in so many ways in Egypt and being led into this relationship with God in a deeper, more intimate way. As a community, we run into the prophets who, if you read the prophets, have a lot to say about these things we're going to be addressing. Some of it rather direct. And we see the more action direct kind of. Tell us about the prophets.
Yeah, well, the prophetic literature it's just rife with these men that have been called by God to deliver a message to the people of Israel who are not being faithful to their covenant. Okay. They're post-exile. They're post-Exodus. So the Exodus is already this, it's this lightning bolt moment where God demonstrates his power, his concern, his love for his people. He frees them by all these miracles. And then, they can't even get to the promised land, and they're building a calf, and then there's the 40 years. All this stuff goes on. They finally get to the promised land. If you're just reading the Bible and you don't know the story, you might think like, all right, well, they're going to get here and it's going to, they're going to just do what they're supposed to, and they screw it up, and I know when I was like in my 20s and I would, read these accounts really for the first time. I read the Bible, like almost all of the Bible when I was in high school, but just reading it by itself. I got no teaching, nobody to help me interpret it. So, more seriously in my 20s, I'm trying to do it, and I'm like, these guys, they're just so dumb. Like, what is their problem? And then you get a little bit older, like Superman's dad says, and you think things become very clear. This is what Clark Kent's father says. And what's clear to me now is, I'm the moron that can't do it. I am the fool that won't listen to God. Like of course those people couldn't do it because they're people. They're just like me. So the prophets are particularly trying to rouse the people back to fidelity. And they have different ways and strategies and, things that they're called to do. And in all of them, what you see is, well, maybe not all, frequently, they're saying things like, listen, y'all are like offering sacrifices. You're doing the fasts every now and then. You're keeping these holy days, but that's like the thing that you're doing that's right. Like, hey, you're messing up everything else. And it's, in a lot of ways, it's like you might say that's like a Catholic who goes to Mass on Sundays. And they're there every Sunday. Yeah. But the rest of their life is in disarray. They're not praying. They're not going to confession. They're just wrapped in sin. But they're showing up and clocking in on Sunday, which God bless them is something. But the prophets here are saying to Israel, that's like not the whole thing. That is one piece. So we'll look at Isaiah, for instance. It's a really good example. It's the first chapter of Isaiah, and I was like kind of trying to decide where we're going to focus. And Isaiah's coming in hot, man. This is right at the beginning of the text, verse 10 of the whole book, and it's a long book, 66 chapters. And this is, you talk about direct. Here's what he says: "Hear the word of the Lord, you rulers of Sodom. Give ear to the teaching of our God, you people of Gomorrah." So Sodom and Gomorrah are not the kind of places you want to be compared to in the Old Testament. Now listen to this question. "What to me is the multitude of your sacrifices, says the Lord. I have had enough of burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fed beasts. I do not delight in the blood of bulls or of lambs or of he-goats. When you come to appear before me, who requires of you this trampling of my courts? Bring no more vain offerings. Incense is an abomination to me. New moon and Sabbath and the calling of assemblies. I cannot endure iniquity and solemn assembly. Your new moons and your appointed feasts my soul hates. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. When you spread forth your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. Even though you make many prayers, I will not listen." But why? "Your hands are full of blood. Wash yourselves. Make yourselves clean. Remove the evil of your doings from before my eyes." And then here's, you want to talk about a foundational passage for Catholic social teaching. "Cease to do evil. Learn to do good. Seek justice. Correct oppression. Defend the fatherless. Plead for the widow." It's a beautiful and searing passage, as Isaiah is saying, not that the liturgy is bad or these prayers are bad, but they become an abomination. They become unacceptable. God says, I cannot bear iniquity and solemn assembly. Like, you want to get together and have these solemn liturgies and offer your sacrifices? Not while you're also violating justice, violating the fatherless, the widow. So what Isaiah, throughout his whole long book, is trying to do is call the people back to covenant fidelity, wherein they are doing good, seeking justice. They're doing those things and praying. Just praying is not, it's not going to get you there. There's an integrity of your life. It's not, on the one hand, you're just dealing with people however you feel like, but then you're showing up and offering a liturgy. It's to become a whole so that you can be holy.
And Craig, the prophetic tradition arises, and we're talking about governmental structure, social context. Israel this time has adopted, against God's recommendation, a similar way of being, which is to have a king. And in 1 Samuel, we have this moment, the Ark of the Covenant is captured, and Israelites lose it. They get it back eventually, and they're just like, we're sick of living by the providence of God. We want a king like everybody else. And you get this warning, the king is going to take your 10%, like the best part of your crops. He's going to take your sons, draw them into battle. He's going to tax you. It's essentially like a warning about your social reality, your economic reality is going to get messed up because you're disordering your relationship with me.
Yeah.
And so the prophetic tradition is to the whole people, but it's especially aimed at the powerful, the rich, the cronies.
Yeah.
So there's almost like within the guy's like, okay, you want to do your own little structure that looks like everybody else? I'm going to just, and this is kind of the church's role in the world, is to be the prophetic tradition against the secular authority that thinks it has it all figured out.
Yeah, I mean, Isaiah in particular, right, is constantly going to Ahaz at the beginning, and there's all this political turmoil. It looks like war is coming their way, and Ahaz is trying to stave the war. He wants to protect his people somehow from these powerful forces that are coming in. And Isaiah, the famous passage like a virgin will conceive a child, right? Which we read at Advent. It has this messianic, overtones to it. Isaiah is talking to Ahaz, telling him the Lord wants to give you a sign that he will protect you. You don't need to join in league with the Egyptians or whoever else to protect God's people. God can protect them. What do you want for a sign? And Ahaz, foolhardily and not being honest, says, I don't need a sign from the Lord. I don't want to tempt him. I don't want to ask for that. And then Isaiah says, well, you're going to get a sign anyway. It's like Bill Engvall. Here's your sign. It's going to be a virgin who's conceived and born a child. This is your sign that the Lord wants to give to you. So, yeah, the prophets, First Kings, the judges, it's just this cycle. If you read the book of Judges, it's here's a person that's going to be in charge, and like for a little while they do everything right, and then they just start completely falling apart. It's that unity of your life with your social reality, like your spiritual life, if you want to call it that, your liturgical life, with your social reality. Those have got to be united, or you're never going to solve anything, and you're going to be miserable. Pope Leo XIV says, a lot of people in the modern world, in his first homily today, a lot of people in the modern world think that they don't need religion because they have their own sort of gods. They've got power, technology, comfort, money, whatever, pleasure. That's the stuff that's going to keep them ordered and safe. Like they've constructed their own reality of this is where I need to be in. And that's not at all what the Bible shows us. It's like, that's not gonna work. Might work for a little bit,
Everybody
not
in the
long term.
Everybody in the era, like a lot of the kings seem to have pretty miserable lives. They don't seem to.
The saddest one is Solomon, right? Who's inherited this tremendous, kingdom from his father, and he has this great wisdom, but then 1,000 concubines, 666 talents of gold, however many horses, I forget. And in Deuteronomy, it's explicitly forbidden for them to gather up horses, gold, and women. It's like you cannot do those things.
That's what the other kings do.
Yeah, and Solomon just kills it. Yeah, he racks up big time. Yeah. And the horses, I think if you read this like prophetic, like, oh, Solomon, all these horses, it's like, why are you worried about the horses? Because it's indicative of the fact that they think that this is what's going to protect us. Yep. An army is going to protect us. You know who has horses in the Bible is the Egyptians, right? And you don't want to be like the Egyptians. And Isaiah will say later, you have become like Egypt. And it's like, oof. Yeah. Sodom and Gomorrah is not good either. So, Isaiah's, you guys are like Sodom and Gomorrah and Egypt. It's like, boy, that's a rough situation to be in. But that's the prophetic literature is, that's where we're at. That's where we're at. That's where we are. The prophetic literature, I guess, if we had to summarize it is focused on the right relationship between worship and justice, covenant fidelity, and serving the poor, serving the widow, those marginalized people, because that's really fundamental. It's not like an accessory.
That's the return to Eden. That's like God is trying to get Israel to become the true light to the nations, to become something that people recognize that he's the head of this people.
That's correct.
So you listen to the next one. Psalms is not normally thought of as, if I want to read about God's call to justice and social order, I'll go to the Psalms. It's like I want to learn how to pray, right?
Yes.
But tell us about Psalms.
Yeah, well, the Psalms, the part of the wisdom literature that the Psalms give us the prayers of Israel, right? So when I teach people about the Psalms, or doing a retreat or whatever, I always tell people, like, look, if you feel like you just don't know how to pray, you just you have the Our Father and the Hail Mary, and that's just like something you learned as a kid, but you want to do something more and you don't have a vocabulary for it. Jesus learned to pray in his human nature by praying the Psalms, and Mary would have taught him the Psalms. It was a woman's responsibility, funny enough, to teach the Psalms to their kids. So Jesus would have learned from Mary the Psalter, right? This is their book. And it's divinely revealed prayers too, right? So it's just really great. Just generally, it's just a good place to go. But because it is sort of the prayers of the people of Israel, there's prayers about all these different facets of their life. Okay. Right? So some of the Psalms are, a little bit more obviously like, oh, thanks for the Exodus. We horse and chariot is cast into the sea, and we're just rolling, and other Psalms are about more, maybe more fundamental or more universal things in the human experience. So in some of them, you see prayer or concern for redeeming not just people, that's in a lot of them, but even creation. Okay. Right, and to redeem creation, to think about nature in some sort of way, does connect when we think about contemporary expressions of Catholic social teaching. There's this environmental concern, but the reason that I want to highlight it is because what else is it pointing us back to? Is it's the garden. That's right. Right. It's Eden. It's creation. That foundational unity and communion that we had at the outset of the story. So in the 8th Psalm, I just had a text here. Mm-hmm. You see a sense of this. So, this is Psalm number 8. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You whose glory above the heavens is chanted by the mouths of babies and infants. You have founded a bulwark because of your foes to still the enemy and the avenger. Then look at these, when I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have established, what is man that you are mindful of him, the son of man, or as the Liturgy of the Hours translation says, mortal man that you keep mind of him, right? Okay. Yet you have made him little less than the angels and have crowned him with honor and glory and honor. You have given him dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet. What things? Sheep and oxen, beasts of the field, birds of the air, fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the sea. So this is taking us back to that Genesis text, right? So the Psalms teach us, again, about covenant fidelity, but also about the restoration of creation, that it is not a secondary concern. So this is one of the things that you'll see some people today who are, I don't know what their motivations are, but do you talk about, okay, Catholic social teaching says that we have environmental responsibilities of some sort, and they go, whoa, environmentalism, that's not in the Bible. It's like, man, yeah, well, the word Trinity is not in the Bible either. So, I don't know why you want to have this kind of argument, but the concern for creation is in that Genesis 1, stewardship, dominion, take care of these things. But it comes back. It's not only in this one passage. And so in the Psalms, you have various points where creation is we're praying for creation. And this is part of that fundamental covenant that we have that lays down our anthropology of what a person is. We're created in the image and likeness of God. We have this dominion. So it takes us back there.
Yeah, exactly right. So, there's a wrong intuition to be like, well, what we do with creation, doesn't that get associated with sometimes like an over reverence for creation, or even like a Mother Earth type of like, obviously not. But the scriptures teach us when you have a mindfulness of creation informed by Genesis, you don't do what all the other nations do around you, which is they end up worshiping.
Right.
They don't. This is what happened. Right? This is what Saint Boniface does. He chops down, the local German tribe's sacred tree, and this is what the Israelites are surrounded by. Like they create idols, but they also worship certain elements of creation because they don't think of God, me, creation. They are overwhelmed by the grandeur of it. They are not informed about it. So having a focus on creation, but ordered by the vision of Genesis, prevents us from falling into over excessive worship or.
Well, I think, just one theme that you see it a lot in the Psalms is water.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
If you just look at the Psalms and the way they treat water, I think it does a really good job of balancing these things out because it sees, on the one hand, water as a blessing, right? I mean, in an agricultural society, of course, you'd see water as a blessing. You need it. We need the rain. We need, but it's also destructive, dangerous, but it also gives us signs of renewal, like after the flood. So there's a book by this priest. I think his name is Isaac Morales. I think he's a Dominican. It's the Bible and Baptism. There's a series that Baker Academic is doing where it's the Bible in each sacrament. They're not all out yet, but the ones that I've read are really good. And he has this I think it's like a whole chapter about like the use of water in the Bible. And you see the waters of creation, peaceful, fruitful, receptive to God. The waters of the flood are angry and destructive. The waters of the Red Sea, powerful, but guided, careful. So in the Psalms, there are places where there's prayers like, I'm about to drown. I mean, it's much more poetic than that, but it's like the water is rising, like I need you to rescue me. And so we have a complicated relationship with creation where it can destroy us and it can be a blessing to us. We don't worship it, that's right. but we can't disrespect it. Right. And so this is why the reason I wanted to focus on at least one psalm, and it was probably all we have time for, is because contemporary papal teaching, which has taken a more decidedly ecological turn since Benedict XVI, and it's not Francis that starts this focus on integral ecology. It's rooted in the scriptures, and remember, Benedict is kind of a Bible scholar, right? So I think there's something to the fact that he, rightfully gets credit as really kind of taking initial steps in that direction. Of course, Pope Francis did, quite a bit more. But he's following in the train of Benedict, who is, of course, aware of all of these connections to the scriptures. So
fascinating. Well, we'll end up in a place that could take its whole episode of the whole series itself. Jesus. The Gospels, certainly contemporary social theory, political theory has sometimes taken the elements of Jesus' teaching that most sound like some political movements or sociological movements, and they say, Jesus was essentially, a revolutionary, or he was only interested in reordering society and caring for the poor and stuff. And we're going to hear that's all true. But give us the sense of Christ. It's crazy. It's like, Christ, what does Christ have to say about Catholic social teaching? But how can we orient ourselves in the Gospels as we look ahead to the whole tradition?
Well, I mean, I thought about how we could, what text, and I don't want to skip talking about Matthew 25 because it has such a, especially in the 20th century, such a rallying point for people that really see the call to Catholic social teaching. I mean, Peter Moran and Dorothy Day, right? They look at Matthew 25 as their sort of rallying call, right? And so this is, it's just one place, but it's. I'm not even going to read the whole passage. I'll read the first part of it. You will know it. So this is from Matthew 25. I'm going to begin in verse 31, and then we'll wrap up with a couple comments. So when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, Then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate them from one another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep at his right hand, but the goats at the left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, Come, O blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. And then, the people that are being told you've done all these things, they're like, when did I feed you or see you naked? And the point is Jesus identifies himself with the poor that they have served. And then the scary part is he says to those that didn't serve the poor, clothe the naked, feed the hungry, you go and get out. Extra omnes, right? So they say at the beginning of the conclave, everybody get out. So this is one of the strongest, I think examples that we have. But really, Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount does, it's a whole sermon where he talks about the integrity of our spiritual life, our prayer life, and then the way that we're living in secret. And so there's this sort of balance of like, go and pray in secret, and your Father who hears you in secret will reward you. But also, what's going on in the secret of your heart? Are you hating someone? That could lead to murder. Are you committing adultery in your heart? So there's this balance of, it's not just that like you have a private prayer life, and that's what's important. It's also in the sanctuary of your soul, like how you even think about people is something that matters. So in the gospel, you see Jesus call people to exceptionally high levels of covenant fidelity in their interior life, how they're thinking about people, but he does not dispense them from what's going on in the real world. And of course, he embodies this himself, right? He is not merely wandering around forgiving sins. Even there's times when he wants to, I'm going to forgive sin. But you know what? I'm also going to tell you to stand up and walk because I think people, it's like they're doubting me that I can forgive your sin, which, yeah, exactly. Yep. So he does that. He takes sin upon himself. He goes to the hungry, and everybody's always hungry when they're hanging out with him, and he feeds them. So Jesus, really, it's in the incarnation that he makes this the most clear. That he is going to us as a poor man to redeem us somehow through his poverty, to give us eternal life somehow through his death. The richness of Jesus in the Gospels and how you can sort of draw out from that principles about Catholic social teaching. Obviously, it's there'd be a huge discussion.
Would you say this is Matthew 25 especially, is when Jesus says, you will literally encounter me, you will encounter me in the person of the poor, the naked. So is that an intensification of the whole? Do we have any Old Testament analog where Yahweh is saying to his people, like, what you do for the least of the poor, you do for me, or something like that?
Yeah. Well, my sense would be in at least in the book of Exodus, you have this concern for the prayers of for the treatment of foreigners. So I don't know it would be quite on that level. Sure. But there is, special concern for immigrants. Use the term immigrants doesn't even really make sense in that sense. But the people that are not part of the covenant that are with you still have to be treated like they are part of the covenant in many ways, not in all ways. But yeah, obviously, the encounter with Christ in the face of the poor, like the motivation for Mother Teresa, like. I don't know that you have something quite that high in the Old Testament. I hesitate to say that there isn't any, but I don't want to just be like, oh yeah, I think that's something that I'd really need to spend a little more time looking before I'm sure on that one.
The intensity though strikes you because this will be, as we end this, why? If you were like, why do we have to keep releasing social encyclicals, or why does this tradition grow? It's because like Jesus is very grave about what's at stake here. It's sheep and goats it's depart from me,
Yeah.
or it's come blessed and inherit the kingdom.
Right.
Also a social order, like to be.
This is all about the kingdom.
Yeah.
Yep. And the kingdom is already inaugurated. Yeah. That's the other thing is when he talks about the kingdom of God, it's not just some future thing. Yeah. Right? This is already happening. We're in the kingdom now. Whether we recognize that or not, or cooperate with it or not, Jesus is throwing a banquet for us every Sunday. Yeah. And he's inviting us to it. Some of us turn down the invitation. Some of us, can't be bothered with it. Look at the Good Samaritan. There's just all of these stories of Jesus that have this almost direct application to social teaching, and it's a font that you could never empty. In the Sermon on the Mount, for instance, Jesus says, not if you give alms, but when you give alms, do so in this manner. Yeah. Right? So he says to pray and fast, and I don't think anybody inherently thinks, oh, that's about social teaching. It certainly is, right? It's not in the category we normally think of. But give alms is like dead obviously this is connected to social teaching. And Jesus does not say if, but when. Yeah. And so there's his witness and his teaching there is in lockstep with what's going to follow in his church. Mm-hmm. It's almost like he founded a church and gave it a shepherd who would continue this tradition on, without breaking it.
Very cool. Well, that's a great place to end. This was a fascinating, fun first episode. We are going to take a couple weeks break. The next episode of Gaudium et Spes will be actually Bishop Walk doing an introduction of his new pastoral letter, which will be released very soon on the Restored Order of the Sacraments of Initiation. But the next time we come back, we're going to be looking at the great gap that sometimes shocks people, like where? So between the Lord ascending into heaven and 1891, what was the nature of Catholic social teaching in 45 minutes? And but it's going to be fun. We're just going to give it a sense of this biblical tradition, as you said, continues on, develops and becomes crystallized to a point that we get this body of teaching we receive in the 19th and 20th century. So thanks for being here, Luke.
Excellent.
It was a joy. Enjoy the rest of your 100 ounces. And
0 calories, baby. Dr. Pepper 0.
We'll see you next time.
We'll see if we can get Brown Bottling to give us a sponsorship.
That'd be awesome. Take care, guys.
Thank you for tuning in today to the Gaudium et Spes podcast. If you would like to know more about our podcast, please visit our website, gaudiumetspes.net, or go to ptdiocese.org and click the button that says podcast. If you listen to the audio version from an app such as Apple Podcast, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, be sure to rate, review, and comment. If you watched us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe or leave us a comment there as well. Thank you for joining us.